14th.
Do my
Love to have
best.
you. Thank you much.
Okay. What do y'all want to talk about? It's a long morning.
Mayor, on the HERO referendum, you had said that you knew from the start that the item would likely wind up on the ballot and that it would be an ugly fight.
Yeah, and
what
I
do you
figured it'd be
think?
on the ballot last year. It was kind of strange it was on this year.
So, knowing that you and other proponents anticipated what was coming, why do you think the result was so lopsided?
The anti-hero coalition did a masterful job of creating a straw man issue and just spewing it at folks for months and months and months. I don't think that the majority of Houstonians actually knew that there was no mention of bathrooms in the ordinance and that it did not in fact allow men into women's bathrooms or boys into girls' locker rooms. That 200 other cities, 17 states have virtually the same laws or ordinances, and that's just not what it does. There were plenty of there are already laws against all the things they said could possibly happen. But if you tell a lie often enough and well enough, it becomes the truth in people's minds. And it is when you create that kind of visceral fear that it's very hard to overcome with logic.
Did the proponents' campaign err in their messaging, in their approach, and their strategy to counter that, or to push a different message?
It's hard to fight. Again, if a lie begins to resonate and it taps into a deep-rooted fear, it's hard to counter that with logic. But I've heard that the only argument that really might have persuaded voters is that if we had threatened economic sanctions on the city of Houston. Well, I'm actually very grateful that the pro-hero campaign was restrained in that, because I obviously couldn't be part of any effort that threatened to cause boycotts or conferences or conventions to leave the city of Houston. And there was, I know, discussion internally. The Greater Houston Partnership was extremely concerned about that, as was I. It could still happen. I fully expect that there will be a direct negative economic impact because of this, but it would have been inappropriate and irresponsible for the pro-hero campaign to make threats in any way.
Have you heard about any potential economic impact already? Have you gotten any calls? Have you? There's things where
I have, but again, in my role as mayor of Houston, I've had to say, I'm in great sympathy with this, but don't do that to my city.
What are they? What
And
can you
so
characterize?
I'm not gonna, because unless and until they decide to do something, it may not materialize, and I'm hoping that it doesn't. I think the other side didn't care how devastating it could be in Houston to have this go down. I care very much, and I don't want to do anything that would in any way jeopardize the economic vitality of the city. So I'm not going to tell you who I've heard from. Not just it's the business community that has spoken loudly in Indiana and in Arizona, and it's the business community that's going to speak here. They're the ones that do conferences and conventions, and so in fact the pro-hero campaign was talking about having a press conference this morning. I don't know whether they did it or not. Again, those of us who love this city and are concerned about that have tried to temper it. Do I think if we had hit hard on the economic aspects, would we have won? I honestly don't know. I think the other side, they manipulated the process very masterfully, and they outplayed us on the other side. I don't know whether it would have helped, but it would have certainly hurt Houston if the pro-hero forces had gone on the attack.
Mayor, what's next? Last night you hinted that this will be back. We will be back. An ordinance will be back.
There's a strong desire on the part of the council members who voted for the Youth and Equal Rights Ordinance. I know everybody thinks it's my initiative, but I don't get anything done down here that goes to the council table without having at least 8 votes, and there were 10 other votes in support of the Youth and Equal Rights Ordinance. And so several council members have talked to me about bringing it back up, perhaps bringing it back up in segments, such as the non-discrimination in employment and housing and public accommodations separately, and so that we can quietly deal with or directly deal with those aspects of the ordinance. There may be other ideas. I cannot support anything that would remove any of the 15 protected categories because they were in there because it is important. They need the protections that HERO has to offer. And the fact that the anti-HERO campaign didn't care, that they were so determined to hurt the transgender community that they didn't care that it also took away protections for veterans and pregnant women and based on race and so forth, that I think we have a responsibility to try to be thoughtful and figure out a way to bring those protections back.
Are you going to do that before you're out of office?
It'll if I can with council. If not, I trust that the next mayor will be one who actually understands that this is a diverse city and needs this kind of ordinance.
Some Texas cities have passed similar laws, but with carve-outs and things like that. And some have said, maybe when you started this process a while back, that you should have done it more in a different way or added on instead of doing it all together.
So a reminder to everyone that when we first started the process and when we put a first draft out, it actually had specific language that provided safe access to the appropriate toileting facilities for the transgender community, but it also provided a defense to prosecution and an affirmative right to a property owner to keep their facilities safe. And the other side jumped all over it, and so we removed it. So we got hit for doing what they wanted us to do. Well played, masterfully played.
You were saying
This is not, this is about politics. It's really not about non-discrimination.
You were saying that you wouldn't bring it back without
I cannot support
classes.
something that takes away any of the 15 categories.
But I'm curious, some other cities have written it in a way that includes protections for transgender residents in various categories, but exempts specific facilities like bathrooms, locker rooms, et cetera. Would you be amenable to
Well, like
that
I said, when we
solution?
started the ordinance, we actually had specific language that discussed that particular issue. At this point, I'm not interested in doing that. The next administration can, or council may bring, as they have demonstrated, they have the ability to bring things forward, so.
You mentioned you might, sorry.
Well, no, I was just wondering, so you're saying that essentially you would bring forward
Okay,
a private
what is,
employment
I've talked about this, I'm not trying to be facetious, but there are certain things, and I will say there are 3 things that define civilization for me, and you could talk about all, art and all sorts, but the 3 things that define living in a modern first world country and real civilization: clean, fresh water when you want it, a toilet when you need it, and air conditioning when you'd like to have it. And what is more fundamental than trying to provide access to a public restroom that is appropriate to the gender of an individual, when all they want to do is use the facilities and go on about their business? So all of this about pedophiles going into women's restrooms is an out-and-out falsehood that they know was a falsehood, and they sold a bill of goods. That's all I can say. Masterfully played.
Is there
you
anything
worry
you
about
can
your
do?
legacy?
Well, I've been asked that. This, and I've said this before as well, this was a personally meaningful item to me because I have been a lesbian activist for 40 years. But if you ask me for a list of the most important things I've done as mayor, there are 100 things on that list that would come before this one. This is not something I did because I'm an out lesbian. This is something I did because I thought it was important for the city of Houston and all those people on that list of protected categories in the city of Houston. It was an important amenity that every other big city in America offers, and it's part of what we as a cosmopolitan global city ought to offer. And I'm intrigued that the other side decided to make it a lot about me, but ultimately it is about what is right and proper and fair and decent and humane. And I am quite comfortable with the side I'm on, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Is there anything you can try to do before you leave office to salvage this, to do anything? And if so, what?
I'm going to sit down with the council members. Again, there were 10 other people in this chamber who strongly supported the ordinance. I'm going to sit down with council members and see what how they want to proceed. And we will also, of course, evaluate what the national and international response from the business community is, because that certainly will make a difference.
You seem to be saying a second ago that it would make sense to bring forward the protections in private employment, but perhaps move more slowly on public accommodations. Is that a fair reading of what you were thinking?
You asked me what we could do. I have no idea what we'll do. It really is, as I said, a matter of what the council members want and what the sort of public sector demands. And if it is left to the, it's possible for us to do something. And I'd certainly, you may have noticed that I'm trying to clear as many things off my desk as possible. I don't really want to leave a whole lot of contentious items for the next administration. And I'm going to try not to leave this one as well. Any other questions?
So on the election, ironically, Proposition 2, which got a lot less attention, has.
This is another one where I think the voter here. I don't want to insult the voters of Houston, but I think that I don't know that they realized that they were giving council members more time in office. But I voted for it. I helped put it on the ballot. I think it's a good thing, but there may have been some voter confusion out there.
And the other topic that coincidentally is now a political issue on Rebuild Houston.
It's not a political issue. It's an issue of litigation.
Okay, but litigation that was political. At any rate,
Yeah.
the point is, are we going to get an update on just what the status of litigation
The city
is?
attorney sent a memo to council members. Basically, we're appealing the judge's ruling, but you have to understand that this is a two-step. There was a citizen ballot initiative that put an item to change the charter on the ballot, and there's a question about the language of that. But then there have been two separate council actions subsequently that actually created the ordinance or created two different ordinances that are the collection of fees. And those are legal actions by council under our authority as a home rule city. And so there's a lot of moving parts in this. What we think the judge has done, and the city attorney will grab me if I say something inappropriate, but what we think the judge has done is taken away the good government protections that the charter had, which says you can't borrow money, you can't reduce the amount of ad valorem that's going into streets and drainage. We think that would be the effect, but we're going to appeal. We're going to see. We got a lot of ways to go. No one on this side of the microphone thinks that in any way we're going to have to go back and return drainage fee money, and we're certainly going to continue to do the capital projects that are underway with the Rebuild Houston. revenue. So, thank you.
Mayor, you mentioned the next administration. You said publicly sort of which mayoral candidates were palatable to you. Obviously, only one of them remains. Do you plan to endorse or
I'm
become
assuming
active
that I'll
on
have an
the-
opportunity to sit down with the two candidates who are remaining and see whether I want to engage, whether they'll be interested in having me engage. I think despite what the anti-hero campaign seems to think, my personal polling continues to trend pretty high, and but there's a question of whether either campaign thinks that an endorsement from me would help them out. So I'll have to wait and see.